In this lesson, we're taking a look at chord variations and embellishments that you can use to easily add some magic and extra character to your basic chords. Now, I'm going to fly through these chords pretty quickly so the video doesn't go on for ages, so I'm not going to talk about specific finger options, so if you use different fingers to play the same chord as me, that's absolutely fine. Go with whatever's comfortable, and I'm also not going to talk too much about the theory of the chords or why they're called certain things, because that's all included in my theory course, which is linked in the description. I'm also including this lesson as part of my 7th chord series, so if you want to learn more about 7th chords specifically and some fun songs to put them into practice, check out that series which is linked below as well, alongside my Patreon page where you can download all the chord diagrams and some extra resources. Now before we start, I want to make it clear that the idea isn't to try and learn all of these chords at once, that would be a bit of a big task, so it's more to show you what the variety of possibilities is with these basic chords, and from there you can pick your favourites, or the ones that you think are going to be most useful to you, and really focus on those and integrate them into your playing, and then you can gradually come back and increase that chord repertoire. So we're going to do them in alphabetical order, so we'll begin with the A chords. So you should be quite happy with your basic A major and A minor chords. We can also play the A major chord using a bar with the first finger, and we can easily adapt this into an A power chord by just muting the B string by changing the angle of the finger, so you're just hearing the open A and then fretted notes on the D and G strings. Now if we go back to the standard A major chord, we can access the sus chords by manipulating the note on the B string. So if I take the little finger off, so we've got the open B string, this would give us an A sus2. Really nice chord voice in this one. And if we use the little finger to play the 3rd fret on the B string, this would give us an A sus4. As I mentioned, you don't have to use the same fingers as me, so if you use fingers 1, 2 and 3, you can still play these chords, still possible. And regarding sevenths, if we take our standard A major chord but include the open G string as well, so I'm going to play it like this with the middle 2 fingers, this would give us an A dominant 7 or just A7. If I then pop the first finger down on the 1st fret of the G string, that changes it to an A major 7. And if we jump back to a normal A minor chord and remove the 3rd finger, so once again including the open G string, this would give us an A minor 7. So there's a good bunch of A chords, and final thing to mention is that you can combine the 7th and sus elements. So if we take this A7 for example, and include the note that we would add to make a normal A sus4, which is the little finger down on the 3rd fret of the B, this now becomes an A7 sus4, so you can quite easily change between the sus4 and the normal A7, so a little bit more chord variety for you there. Next we'll take a look at B chords. Now there's not many options here because we don't have an open B chord to play with, but we do have a B7 which sounds like this. So from the A string I'm going 2nd fret, 1st fret, 2nd fret, open, 2nd fret. This is quite a common chord, so there's your B7. Now in the minor 7ths video I explained the B minor 7 using a bar, but just to avoid bar chords for this video we can play B minor 7 like this, which is quite a nice voicing. What I'm doing here is avoiding the bottom string, then I've got 2nd fret, open D string, 2nd fret G, 3rd fret on the B. I'm avoiding the top string as well. This would be a B minor 7. I would play it with the back 3 fingers, just like I play the A chord, but you could also play it with the front 3, sounds exactly the same. So that gives you a nice option for a B minor 7 that doesn't involve a bar. C chords now, so if we start with a standard C major chord, from here we can change the note on the D string by popping the little finger down on the 3rd fret, which gives us kind of a C sus4 sound. Or we could have the open D string by removing the little finger and the middle finger, which gives us a C sus2 sound. So these are quite easy to jump between. Add some nice embellishments. We can then take that D note and throw it up an octave by popping the little finger down on the 3rd fret of the B string. This gives us a C add 9 if we include the top string as well. That's quite a nice chord. You may also be familiar with C add 9 played like this, which looks like a G chord with the bottom 2 fingers moved up a string. So those are some nice C add 9 chords. If we jump back to the standard C chord, we can create a C7 by popping the little finger down on the 3rd fret of the G string. That gives us a bluesy chord, And if we remove the little finger and also remove the first finger, so we've got the open B string now, that gives us a nice C major 7. So good options for C chords there. D chords next, and we've got quite a lot of options here. So if we start with normal D major, you should be familiar with that, as well as D minor. Now if we go back to the D major shape, but we remove the middle finger and also mute the top string by just laying the first and third finger down slightly. So now we're only hearing the open D, the G and B strings. This gives us a D power chord or a D5. If we then arch the fingers so that we can purposefully hear that open top string, that would give us a D sus2. You can hear that extra note on top. If we jump back to standard D major, but pop the little finger down on the third fret of the top string, that gives us a D sus4. So once again, the D major and D sus chords are quite easy to jump between. So lots of famous songs that make use of those chords. Next, if we take our standard D major chord and flip it so it looks like a mirror image, so we end up with a triangle shape pointing in the opposite direction, this would give us a D7. If instead of that we bar the top 3 strings, so we've just got the open D string plus the second fret on the G, B and high E strings, this would be D major 7. And finally, if we bar the top 2 strings just on the first fret like you would do in an F chord, and then add the second finger also like an F chord on the second fret of the G, but we keep the open D string, that would give us a D minor 7. And once again, like the A chords, we can combine the 7th and sus elements. So for example, if I play a D7, but I add the little finger down on the 3rd fret on the top string, this would give us D7 sus4. Taking a look at E chords now, so if we start with a standard E major and E minor by removing the first finger, those are pretty straightforward. We can also get the E power chord played in a similar way to how we got the A power chord, so open low E string and then first finger bar and second fret on A string and D string and muting all the top strings. If we now pop back to a standard E major, we can quite easily get an E sus4 by popping the little finger down on the second fret of the G. That's quite a nice chord embellishment. Sadly, we can't have an E sus2 in this position because we run out of frets if we try and play any lower on the G string, but we can get an E7 by just removing the 3rd finger. So this is like an E major chord with an open D string. There's your bluesy E7 sound. We can also achieve this from a normal E major shape by popping the little finger down on the 3rd fret of the B string, which is throwing that 7th in an octave higher. So just a little bit of a brighter voice in there. From here, if we just take the first finger off, this is an E minor 7. So literally an E minor with the little finger added on 3rd fret B. You could also play this with your first 3 fingers as well. And from this position, we can have another nice voice in that I want to mention, which is popping the little finger down on the 3rd fret on the top string as well. This is still an E minor 7, just a slightly brighter sound to it. And you might recognize this chord from songs like Wonderwall and Wish You Were Here. Now we'll take a look at F chords, and we're going to avoid the full bar chord, so that leaves us with 2 options, which are the top 4 strings or the top 5 strings if we integrate the little finger. It's a little bit easier to show the sus chords from the 4-string chord perspective, so let's start there. So we've got our F chord, and if we pop the little finger down on the 3rd fret of the G, this gives us an F sus4, back to normal F. And if we take that middle finger off, so we've got the open G string, there's the sus2, so feels very much like the C sus chords, very easy to move between these ones. If we go back to standard F chord, but we unbar the top string, so put a little bit of curve in the first finger, then we get an F major 7. This is a really nice sounding chord, but you have to make sure that the top string isn't muted. We can also play this as a 5-string version as well. Really nice chord, but just to go one better, if we remove the second finger again so we get that sus2, this is an F major 7 sus2, which is honestly one of my favourite chords on guitar. Just think it's a really nice balanced voicing, so there's some good options for F chord variations. And finally, we've got the G chords. So you're probably already familiar with the two ways of playing an open G chord, which are this way with all of the fingers on, or with the open B string and no little finger by moving the third finger to the top string. Those are both just normal G major chords. However, if we play G like this, so using the middle finger on the bottom string and also the two fingers on the top string with the A string muted underneath the middle finger, this is actually a G power chord or a G5. This is the kind of G chord that you'd want to play if you had a bit of distortion on, kind of AC/DC style. From here, we can pop the first finger down on the second fret of the G, which gives us a nice G sus2. And also, if we do that same trick we did before and lose the little finger, move the third finger to the top string, that adds the B note back in, so this makes it a G add 9. There's explanations on why the names of these chords change in the theory course, so do check that out if you're interested. From here, we can also play G like this, with just the third finger on the bottom string and little finger on the top string. Once again, I'm muting the A string underneath my third finger. And from here, this frees up the first finger, which can pop down on the first fret of the B string to give us a G sus4. Or if we now lose the little finger and pop that first finger on the top string, so first fret on the high E, this gives us a G7. And if we slide that finger up one fret, or maybe play it with the middle finger, or probably my favourite way of doing this is using the first finger on the top string and second finger on the bottom string. This gives us a G7. So that's third fret low E, the A string is still muted, and we've got the second fret on the high E as well. So plenty of G chords to play around with also. Hopefully that gives you an insight into where you can go with just these basic chords. Now, as I mentioned, you don't want to try and learn them all at once, just focus on integrating a couple into your playing at a time. And do let me know in the comments which ones are your favourites. There'll definitely be tons that I've missed out as well, so feel free to highlight some new chords that I haven't mentioned, because it's always fun to explore new ideas. Remember, you can access the theory course and the 7th chord series via the links in the description, as well as my Patreon page where you can download all the chord diagrams and some extra resources. Be sure to subscribe for more content and give the video a like if you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next lesson.